You can imagine, we are 15, 16 men, I mean boys really, from 25 to 35, on tour together for 6 to 8 months of the year. I mean now it's full time, the guys play in IPL and CPL, so cricket is a business. But in my generation, it was a season, 6 to 8 months. And it was these men, because most of them were dads, fathers, husbands, we had work, a lot of them were employed. So the time on cricket tour was just a release and fun, serious. We worked hard, we played hard, but we certainly enjoyed it because there was lots of time together in the dressing room to reflect and learn every day. And sometimes with even the opposition, we would sit and have a drink afterwards with the Australians, and they weren't so bad off the field. You know, they were incredibly tough on the field, but really accommodating off the field and giving us advice on what's it like to tour India, Sri Lanka, England, places that we'd never been to before. But the dressing room was quite an interesting place with us, different ages of men, some young, some not so young, but everybody emotionally about the same age, probably 13 or 14. So young boys on tour. And we picked up a few nicknames. And one of my nicknames was the Indian Rubber Man. Now in South Africa, it was a bit of a mixed connotation because, excuse my language now, in South Africa we describe condoms as rubbers. So when the guy said to me, I'm the Indian Rubber Man, I said, you're telling me I'm endorsing condoms in India? Why are you telling me? Because I know with 1.4 billion people, no one's using condoms. There's no choice. So there's no point in being the brand ambassador for any of these such products because nobody's using them with such a big population. And I said, no. It's because when you dive and you hit the ground, you jump up. And because I'd learned that the longer you spend on the ground, the more layers of skin you lose, because the ground is so hard here. But that wasn't the real story, because this diving around, the Indian Rubber Man, because the guys would kick me under the table and they would come across to me when I was fielding. Instead of a pat on the back for this one big dive, my teammates, the 2 or 3 of them there, Backward Point and Herschel, they'd say, but Jonty, that's a TV dive. What's a TV dive? No, because, you know, any of the ladies here are married? Ladies here, you married? Yeah. Okay, so Indian mothers and South African mothers are very similar. They think their sons are wonderful, right? They can do no wrong. So these guys are my teammates are saying, Jonty, that's a TV dive because you could never have reached the ball. You just dived so you would, because then I would get up with these elbows and knees that are bleeding because I learned the ground is hard, and that's why I would bounce up like the Rubber Man. I said, so your mother can watch television at home. She can say, look at my son. Isn't he wonderful? He's diving. My test match, my whites are brown here on the knees, on the hips, and there's blood from my elbows. So my mother can sit at home and say, isn't my son wonderful? Look at those other boys. They're not even dirty. Their clothing is not even brown. And my son is bleeding for the team and bleeding for the country. And that was their interpretation of me diving for balls that I didn't stop. It's a TV dive, Jonty. I said, but if I don't go for the ball, how do I know I'm not going to stop it? Because that was my mantra as a fielder, was if you don't go, you'll never know. So it's so important because a fielding catch for me, as a fielding coach with Mumbai, Punjab, Lucknow, so for 15 out of 18 seasons, I would never be too critical, unless it was technical mistakes that the player had made that we could work on in the field. If a player dived for the ball and dropped it or missed it, I wasn't too worried. But if they stood there and watched the ball go past, I would be a little bit upset and say, why didn't you dive for the ball? And they say, well, I could never reach it. I say, well, how do you know? If you don't go, you don't know, right? And that's such a big, important lesson for me because in business especially, you know, I worked for the bank. I had a record that I had targets and goals for the year that I had to achieve. And when you don't achieve your goals, no one likes to see that.